And this is right after Nathaniel comes out of his stupor, let's say, and discovers Ms. Lutyens had been dismissed. Okay? We read, he's going on with his lessons and such. And one of the things about Gladstone that's important, bottom of 112, Gladstone had avenged himself on anyone who wronged him. He had upheld his honor, was praised for it. Nathaniel planned to do the same. So he's taking this guy as his role model. From now on, he used his impatience, only to spur himself on. If he'd learned one painful lesson, it was not to act until he was truly ready. And through many long blah, 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 blah. So, he puts on a mask of obedience and contrition with his master, but what does he really think about him? Middle of 113. He did not regard Arthur Underwood as his true master any longer. Why? His masters were the magicians of old, who spoke to him through their books, allowing him to learn at his own pace, offering ever-multiplying marvels for his mind. They did not patronize or betray him. What's he mean by patronize? Because patronize can have two meanings. It can have one very good meaning, and it can have one very bad meaning.
Treating it like a child.
Okay. Treating like a child. What's the good meaning?
Make you a patron.
To be a patron to somebody, it's just the opposite of this. It's to be a supporter. A patron of the arts, someone who patronizes the arts, is someone who supports the arts, gives lots of money to symphonies and such. So, notice, these old magicians whose works he reads, they don't do that form, and they don't betray. Why not? Because they're dead. They can't. Sorry. Arthur Underwood had forfeited his right to Nathaniel's obedience and respect the moment he failed to shield him from Simon Lovelace's jibes and physical assault. Forfeited that right according to whom? According to Nathaniel. Okay? Does he forfeit those rights? Or are those rights part and parcel of being master in, I don't know what you want to call them relational-wise, adoptive father, stepfather, foster, something weird. Now, I'm not saying adoptive parents or step parents or foster parents are weird, but this situation kind of is. Right? This, Nathaniel knew, simply was not done. That is, not defending your apprentice. Every apprentice was taught that their master was effectively their parent. He or she protected them until they were old enough to stand up for themselves. Arthur Underwood had failed to do this. He had stood by and watched Nathaniel's unjust humiliation. But what if Arthur Underwood didn't think it was unjust? What if he thought, as a quote-unquote parent, the kid got what was coming to him? Okay, maybe a little extreme, beating him into unconsciousness. Why did he do this? Because he was a coward. Now, we can debate whether or not Nathaniel is right about some of the other things, but that's right. Underwood is a coward. Okay? He's unwilling to take any step that might anger somebody else, unless that somebody else is somebody beneath him. Which is also the kind of a description of what kind of person. Who won't attack those bigger and more powerful than themselves, but they will attack somebody smaller and less powerful? Bullies. Arthur Underwood is a bully. Okay? Worse than all this, he sacked Ms. Lutyens. Why? She defended him. She stood up for Nathaniel. Skip a few pages, quite a few, and Bartimaeus tells Nathanael what he saw and overheard when he got the amulet. Okay? And let's see here. Now we can skip that. Go on to the next chapter. Chapter 14, Bartimaeus. And Bartimaeus starts, page 124, saying, perceptive readers will know, I had a new optimism in my attitude towards the kid. Why? I knew his birth name. Meaning I could have the upper hand. Okay? So, Nathanael tries to give him commands. Bartimaeus just kind of shakes them off. And we're told, bottom of 127, Bartimaeus is really getting under his skin. With an effort, the kid controlled himself. He says, don't worry, I'll find another way. Bartimaeus, why not ask the boss? Who? Your master. You got to be, not him. That is, Bartimaeus says, I know Underwood isn't really your master. There is somebody else you're answering to. Middle of 128, I'm acting on my own. Come on. You summoned me, not bad for a kid. Bartimaeus then says, I knew I was talking too much, but I couldn't help it. I was worried. The kid was looking at me with a calculating expression that I didn't like. Why is Bartimaeus worried? How old is he? Still.
11.
He's still 11. He hasn't even gotten his real name. And he could already summon up a jinn of the level of Bartimaeus. We're going to find out what level that is in a few pages when Underwood goes up to the room and finds the pentacle, the books, the candles. Okay. Nathanael says, page 129, it's Simon Lovelace I'm interested in. He humiliated me, and I'm going to destroy him for it. What does it mean to humiliate someone? Or, when you humiliate someone, what are you actually doing to that person? Less than what?
What they already
Less than you.
Less than you, less than what they are.
Your perception.
You're getting close to it, but you're not getting to the center.
less than what people think you are.
Really close. Less than what you think you are. When you are humiliated, what is really happening? The opinion you have of yourself is what's being damaged. Okay? It's not what others' opinions are. It's the opinion you have, because the opinion you have of yourself is what you think others ought to think of you. So how old was he when Simon Lovelace beat him? He wasn't 11 yet. He was like 9, I think. Yeah. So when that happened, Nathanael already had what kind of opinion about himself? Because usually to be humiliated, it means you have to already be up here. You can't humiliate. Rephrase this. I'm going to use an example, okay, and then I'm going to qualify it. You can't humiliate a homeless person, okay? Now let me qualify it. Yes, you can, okay? Anybody can be humiliated. What do I mean? You can't humiliate a homeless person if that homeless person is, in a lineup next to a bunch of millionaires. Why? Because they're not on the same level. In terms of, the eyes of society. Yeah, in God's eyes, so to speak, everybody's equal kind of a thing. Okay? Nathanael's humiliated because he already is thinking a lot of himself. Well, one of the reasons for that? What's he already done by that age? Well, he has summoned Bartimaeus. Okay, that's pretty significant. Or that comes just later. I'm going to destroy him, Bartimaeus. Too much hate's bad for you. Who just said that? A demon. Okay. Modern mythology, demons are supposed to be all about hate, right? Demons, quote unquote, in the popular conscious, the Exorcist film. Demons don't inhabit somebody because they love them. They inhabit somebody because they hate them and want to destroy that individual. Pick The Exorcist because I watched a clip last night. The guy who directed The Exorcist, William Friedkin or something like that, last year did a documentary with the priest that the priest in The Exorcist movie from 1973 is based upon. The guy was doing an exorcism and it said, I want you to come film this. It's the first filmed, quote unquote, real exorcism. He's got neurologists watching it. They're going, I can't explain how that happens, Anyways, interesting clip. You can look for it on YouTube. Too much hate's bad for you. Why? It can consume you. Notice, does Bartimaeus have an answer? That's it. He doesn't have a witty answer. When he says too much hate's bad for you, he's just kind of pulling out of his bag of, aphorisms, proverbs. So a little bit of hate is good for you then? Yeah, everything in moderation. A little bit. I'll tell you a secret, demon. By dint of my magic, I saw how Simon Lovelace came by the Amulet of Samarkand some months ago, a stranger, etc., etc. Okay. So he finds out Lovelace had somebody murdered to get it, etc. They keep talking, and then Bartimaeus says, you can't hurt me so easily now, page 130. I can still bind you to my will. You still have to obey my commands. He says, yeah, that's true. I can't break out of them unless you use your shriveling fire, blah, 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 blah. But, I can find some other way. I can, accidentally drop your name somewhere. Middle of 131. He was rattled. I could see that much. His eyes flicked from side to side. What has Bartimaeus just done in saying that? This is the law of unintended consequences. He thinks he's gained leverage. Unintended consequences. His intended consequence is to put fear into Nathaniel and to make Nathaniel release him. What's the unintended consequence? Well, Nathaniel comes up with another idea. And he says, I can't make you stop from betraying me, but I can make sure you suffer along with me. And what does he do? He pulls out a tobacco tin. About this size, but thicker, but about, that dimension. And Bartimaeus says, 132, that's a tobacco tin. Don't you know smoking kills? Doesn't contain tobacco, it's full of rosemary now. He lifted the lid. Just a little waft of the scent of rosemary comes out. The scent reached me and made the hairs rise on the back of my neck. Some herbs are very bad for our essence. Rosemary's one of these. So magicians can't get enough of it. So they use it, in other words. He says, I'm going to send you on a mission. The moment you've gone, I'm going to cast the spell of indefinite confinement, binding you into this tin. Spell won't take effect immediately. I'll give it a month. If for any reason I'm not around to cancel this spell, and you shall find yourself withdrawn into this tin and trapped there until such time as it is opened again. So what do we have? Aladdin and the genie. That's what happened to Aladdin. Excuse me. That's what happened to the genie. The genie got trapped into a lamp. Aladdin found it, rubbed the lamp, the genie was freed. So, he's saying, you're going to get stuck in this tin of stuff that is damaging to your essence. How long might you be there? You got a scheming little mind, haven't you? In other words, he devious little bastard. And in case you're tempted to risk the penalty, I shall bind this tin with bricks and throw it into the Thames before the day is out. So it's not like he's just going to leave the tin sitting on his desk. Bind it with bricks, throw it in the bottom of the Thames. Well, how likely is it somebody's going to find it there? Not very likely. So what do you say to that? How about you forget about that little silly tin business? I'll serve you. Don't. Okay. The indefinite confinement spell is a bad one. Footnote 133. One of the worst threats magicians can make. You can be trapped for centuries. Horrid, minute spaces and a capital. Some of them are just plain daft. I mean, I even knew a Ginny once who was imprisoned in a dirty old lamp. Okay. Part 2. Nathaniel. So when it's Nathaniel, we get things from Nathaniel's perspective. When it's Bartimaeus, we get things from his perspective. When it's neither of them, it's somebody else. The Ginny knew his birth name, 137. He knew his birth name. Why is it repeated? This is bad. This is really bad. Bartimaeus of Uruk, Sakr al-Ginny of al-Arish. He had allowed it to uncover his name. Mrs. Underwood had spoken, the Ginny had heard, and in that moment the cardinal rule had been broken, and now Nathaniel was compromised, perhaps forever. Yes?
Do all the Ginny, or I guess demons around that level have titles like that? Or is it just Bartimaeus just been around for forever?
Okay, it is partly Bartimaeus has been around. What else is it though? Think of what I was just saying about Nathaniel and humiliation. This is what Bartimaeus says about himself. Though it is in the books. Bartimaeus is called the Sakr al-Ginny of, and I have no idea what Sakr al-Ginny means. Okay? But it probably means, almost highly exalted one. We're going to see, for example, when he gets to Sholto Pens, what does he make the imp do? How does he make the imp address him? Oh, your most high excellency, etc., etc. There was an incident a couple years ago, and I'm trying to remember if this was in the United States or Canada. I think it was the United States. Just the utter craziness our world is running to. A university had passed a policy that said professors were required to call the students by whatever the students wanted themselves to be called. Okay? Not because of, something like transgender issues. Where a student who is, genetically male but wants to be called Lisa or something like that. Okay? Not that. But if a student comes in, Andrew comes in and says, hi, I don't want to be called Andrew anymore. I want to be called Your Royal Highness. According to the university policy, I would be required to address Andrew every time he came in, rather than Andrew, Your Royal Highness. And maybe, Joseph wanted, Your Excellency, and just on down the line, so that nobody's being called by their names. They're being called, bow down and worship me, your, slovenly professorness or whatever, kind of a thing. That's kind of Bartimaeus, if he can, he's going to pump up what others think about him. Okay? So, give them any power at all, and sooner or later, they would have you. So, can Nathaniel really let him go? He's got his birth name. If Nathaniel releases him completely, sends him back to what's called the other place, everything's free and clear, Nathaniel has nothing to worry about, he still knows his name. So if somebody else, this time period, were to then summon Bartimaeus, he could tell that other person's Nathaniel's name. Okay? So, they're getting ready for the naming, and page 14. Nathaniel asks, because Underwood suggests Theophilus Throckmorton, a notable alchemist. Okay, alchemy is a low-level form of magic. In these books, it's like astrology. Okay. Yeah, that combination's free. Oh, you don't really like that one? Okay, how about Balthazar Jones? Okay, so you've got a name? Because Nathaniel's like, I don't like that name. Balthazar, really? William Gladstone? Okay, put it in our world terms. If we had, this kind of setup where you didn't get a name and then you had to choose a name, what kind of name would somebody like Nathaniel choose? A powerful name associated with somebody really powerful in our world. I don't mean really powerful, somebody who might have been a president for a term or 2 terms. It might be a president. Okay? It might be a prime minister. Winston Churchill would be kind of an equivalent. Abraham Lincoln, George Washington. Okay? Those kinds of names, major, powerful leaders. Gladstone, some names, boy, are too great, too recent, too tough. When was Gladstone alive? 100 years ago. That's recent? Sorry, didn't think. Ambition is all very well. Well, Bartimaeus has already told us what motivates, really, all magicians. Power. Ambition is the means to power. Okay? But you must cloak it. That is, now, notice that little nugget there. It's okay to have ambition, but don't let others know about it. You go naming yourself Jesus, not Jesus, Jesus. I'm going to choose the name Jesus Christ. That kind of means what? You're a little full of yourself, aren't you? So, if it's too obvious, you will find yourself brought down in flames before you reach your 20s. A magician must not draw attention to himself too soon. Notice that. Kind of traditional morality. Let me be even more specific. Traditional Christian morality would say, don't draw attention to yourself. Why? The chief of the virtues is humility, which is the opposite of the chief of the virtues of the wizards. So don't draw attention to yourself too soon. Has Arthur Underwood ever really drawn attention to himself? Has he ever really made a name for him? No, he hasn't. That's part of the problem of having somebody like Nathaniel as his apprentice. Certainly not before he has summoned his first Mowler or Molar, or however you pronounce the word. I have no idea how it is. So he gets his name, John Mandrake. Pretty boring. John is about as average as you can get. Okay? And they're on their way back. Underwood says, middle of 143, in a few years, we'll have you in a worthy job, perhaps an undersecretary in one of the lesser ministries. Won't be glamorous, but it'll suit your modest capabilities. Not every magician can aspire to become an important minister like me, John. Well, what kind of minister is he? He is a under minister. That means a lesser minister in a dead-end job. But that shouldn't stop you making a contribution of your own, however meager. It would be an honor, sir. Okay? Yeah, really. So he says, I'm going to take you to Parliament with me, blah, 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 blah. Let's see here. They go over Blackfriars Bridge. Nathaniel remembers what he told Bartimaeus. He's going to make his way back to Blackfriars Bridge later on to drop the thing. Chapter 16, Bartimaeus, page 147. Freedom is an illusion. it always comes at a price. Now, is that Bartimaeus speaking, or is that Jonathan Stroud speaking to his audience saying, here's a nice little aphorism or proverb for you. Freedom isn't real. How much freedom do you really have? The United States is supposed to be predicated on this idea of freedom. You can't get in your car, drive out to this area of road here, and punch it to six. I mean, yes, you can, but what happens if campus police is around? You're not just going to get a little ticket for speeding. If you're doing 60 in this little strip right here, okay? They're going to take your license for reckless endangerment and such, okay? So, Bartimaeus is thinking about his quote-unquote freedom. We're going to skip a bunch again. And we hear, because Bartimaeus has gone down to Sholtos and he's asking questions. Who's our Devereaux? Page 151. You're kidding. You don't know who Rupert is. Prime Minister. Small piece of advice. It's not wise to be rude to someone bigger than you, especially when they've just trapped you under a boulder. You can stick your advice up with a bunch of asterisks. These polite asterisks replace a short censored episode characterized by bad language and some sadly necessary violence. That is, my violence against him. When we pick up the story again, everything is as before, except that I'm perspiring slightly and the contrite imp is the model of cooperation. Why? Torture works. Torture works. So, he finds out he's the British Prime Minister, almost bounteous and merciful one. Is he really? Okay. So, they keep talking, and let's see here. I'm going to skip. Bartimaeus gets caught. Page 164. Bartimaeus is still talking to the imp. And he says, bottom of 164, one thing was for sure, the boy Nathaniel had got himself into deep waters when he'd ordered me to pinch the amulet, far deeper than he knew. Stood to reason Simon Lovelace would stop at nothing to get it back. And he would silence anyone. Silence doesn't mean cut his tongue out. He's going to kill him. Okay? So, I'm going to skip a bunch again. Back to Nathaniel. Page, chapter 18, bottom of page 175, top of 176. The day's come to a close. He's lying in bed. He's kind of thinking of the events of the day. Try as he might to eject it from his mind, the anxiety came back. What anxiety? Bartimaeus knowing his birth name. It was like a guilty conscience, prodding him, reminding him, never letting him rest easy. Why does Stroud say like a guilty conscience and that it wasn't a guilty conscience? What's the difference between the two? When you say something is like something, what does the like mean? It's not the real thing. Okay? Saying the water in this bottle is like Dasani water tells you this isn't Dasani water. This is a Dasani water bottle, but the water that's in here comes straight from a tap. It's not pure, it's not mineral, it's filled with all the wonderful crap that's in Rutherford County water. Okay? It's similar, how? It's water. It's wet, it's relatively cool. It's water. Like, why doesn't he have a guilty conscience? Because he doesn't think he's guilty. but it's like a guilty conscience in that something up here is bugging him. It's eating away at him. Okay? We find out there are people coming over. Okay? Or they're talking about going to Parliament and such. So, page 177, Underwood's been calling for Nathaniel, and Nathaniel hasn't heard him, and he comes and he finds him, and Nathaniel says, sorry, I was reading. Not that book you weren't, you dozy fool. It's 4th level, written in Coptic. You'd never have a hope. You were asleep, don't deny it. Nathaniel's eyes had been closed at the moment his master walked in. He found it easier to memorize things that way. All things considered, this was perhaps fortunate. So, he's not only memorizing, what's he doing? He's not only reading, he's memorizing. He doesn't necessarily have a photographic memory. I don't know if you've ever known someone who does. I have known someone who could, read this whole book, and you could go, okay, smarty pants. Tell me what is the 5th word in on the 4th line down on page 212. And they'd sit there and go, that. You open the book and turn to the 5th word in, the 4th line down on page 212, and it would be that. It's really disgusting because they don't really have to learn because they just remember everything, okay? So, they get in the limo and head off to the party, and we hear the discussion about the night police and what's going on in London and the London Inns. Okay. Let's see here. And we get to Parliament Square. Bottom of 181, top of 182. They see Nathaniel sees for the first time the monuments to the Great War. Then a few monolithic sculptures representing ideal virtues such as patriotism, respect for authority, the dutiful wife. I mean, you want to go full patriarchal, it's right here. Nathaniel begins to notice groups of silent onlookers on the sidewalks watching the cars go by. They look sullen, hostile. Most of the faces were thin and drawn. Why? What does it mean to have a face that is thin and drawn? Because they're hungry. These are commoners. Is Nathaniel's face thin and drawn? Is Mr. Underwood's? Is Mrs. Underwood's? No. So what are we? Okay. There's that class distinction. The magicians eat well. Commoners not so much. Large men in gray uniforms stood casually further off, keeping an eye upon the crowds. Everyone, policemen, commoners, looked very cold. And what happens? Nathaniel, sitting by himself in the insulated comfort of the car, a glow of self-satisfaction began to steal over him. What does that mean? A glow of self-satisfaction. He's looking out. He sees these thin, hungry people.
It's like a smugness.
Yes. It's the exact difference, if you're familiar with any of them, actually, the Hunger Games films. It's the exact opposite of what Katniss feels on the train to the Capitol when she sees hungry people. She doesn't feel smugness. She doesn't feel happy. She feels sorrow for these individuals. Different kind of hero here. He was part of things now. What does that mean? He's an insider on the way to Parliament. An insider. Inside what? The magical world? Yeah. What else? Exactly. Commoners are out here. He's getting closer and closer to the inner. What's the inner circle? Think of the United States.
The cabinet.
The capital, the elite,
3%.
the 3%, the 1%, the 0.1%. I mean, what's the inner circle? They're saying the United States.
Central bank.
Central bank, possibly. Is it Congress? Well, you got 535 members there. They can pretty much do what they want, right? Pretty much. Okay. Is it the president? Is it the Supreme Court? I mean, think about that gang. You get nominated to the Supreme Court and confirmed 40 years old. You're there for life. President isn't there for life. Members of Congress aren't there for life. Okay? That's a pretty good inner circle to be part of. So Nathaniel thinks he's what? Okay, he's heading towards that inner circle, but also you can look at this way. Rising in power. How old is he? He's 12 years old, and he's thinking like this. He was important, set apart from the rest. Well, who's the rest? The commoners. And it felt good. This is, I don't think this is the actual biblical allusion or parable, but this is kind of like, when Jesus tells the parable of the Pharisee and the publican. They both go into the temple to pray, and the Pharisee looks down at the publican and says, "Oh God, I thank you that I'm not like him. I follow the laws, I obey the rules. Aren't you glad I'm so good?" And the publican falls down on his face and says, "Forgive me, a sinner." Okay? Nathaniel's kind of the Pharisee line. For the first time in his life, he knew the lazy exhilaration of easy power. Why is it easy? Kind of. What's he had to do at this point? He got his name. Okay, he's read a few books. According to Underwood, he's read a few books. He's read a few more than Underwood has. Okay. So, they go to the party, page 185. They get in, and what happens? What does Underwood do?
Start trying to suck up to demons that leave up him.
Okay. Does he do that with his wife and apprentice at his side?
No, he gets alone.
No. Nathaniel's like, well, isn't he going to introduce us to anybody? Don't worry, dear. It's important for you, Master, to talk to the top people. We don't need to talk to anyone, do we? He's like, the hell we don't. Yes, we do. I want them to know. I'm John Mandrake. I'm going places, We can still watch, which is always a pleasure. Martha's a dutiful wife, but she's not much more than that. Okay? Logan, were you going to say something? Okay. So, she, Lovelace's wife, Underwood's wife, points out who all the powerful people are. Okay? Duval, in charge of the police, Jessica Whitwell, in charge of the secret police, Devereaux, etc. And we're told, 187, the Prime Minister, right in the middle of the page, the most powerful man in Britain, perhaps the world, even at a distance, Nathaniel experienced a warm glow of admiration. Why? Power. He wanted nothing more than to get close and watch him, to listen to him speak, etc. So, what's kind of the whole purpose of this chapter? It's the last 2 pages. It's the resistance throwing the bomb. Okay? Why? Because Nathaniel sees who throws it. What happens as a result of his seeing who throws it? He's suddenly important. page 198. They see Mr. Underwood, bedraggled, beard, messed up. Okay? And Nathaniel goes on and tells what he saw. We find out about the resistance. Who are the resistance primarily? What kind?
Younger.
Firebrand.
Younger. They're predominantly children, people in their teens. Okay? They're not older people. Why aren't they older people? Why aren't they people my age? We will find out later. There are some in the resistance who are older.
Sort of resigned to their fate.
Bing. They've been beaten down for so long. They accept their fate. Okay? We go back to Bartimaeus. Where is Bartimaeus at this point? Captured. Page 214. There's Jessica Whitwell, leader of the Gestapo kind of a group, and we're told he's in a mournful orb. Well, what's the danger about a mournful orb? Notice that mournful, full of sorrow. You can't get out,
It'll continually get
and it
smaller.
continually gets smaller. So it's not bad if you're my size and the mournful orb has a diameter of this room, because you can walk around and take a cup of coffee. But it starts shrinking, and it comes down to diameter of this table. Well, that's still a little bit of room, and then it keeps shrinking till it's this diameter, and I'm standing like this. Well, if I'm a human stuck in that, what can I not do? I can't get any smaller than I am. If I'm a spirit, I can change from this form into a cat. That's quite a bit smaller. Cats can grow up really small. And then I can change into a mouse. And then I can change into ever smaller living forms. And what's it going to be about the smallest living form? Flea. Mite. Amoeba. But an amoeba doesn't have sentience. A mouse does. A flea might have a scintilla. An amoeba, a paramecium, no. Okay? And Bartimaeus will talk about that in other spots. So,
Do their bones break like ours?
whose? Spirits? They don't have bones.
I know,
When
if
they
they're in the
occupy
Oh.
a physical form.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they can be tortured. Okay? Because spells can be put on a spirit that will not allow them to change form. Though we don't see any use. I mean, it's mentioned. And what happens? He's being summoned. So he's stuck in the mournful orb, and at the same time being called back, but he can't go back. But being summoned back means what? It's like something is pulling at his essence, like it's pulling through the but he. Talk about your proverbial rock in a hard place. I mean, he's stuck. Okay? So, what does he do? He gets Jabor Fakral to screw up. He gets loose. Page 230. Back up. 230. Underwood comes in and finds out what Nathaniel's been up to. You have Faust's compendium there, and the mouth of Ptolemy. You have summoned or attempted to summon a genie of at least the 14th level. So that means there's 1 through 13 below. We're not told how many levels are above. I mean, theoretically, there could be 1,000. Theoretically, here could be 1. There could be 15 levels. And so Bartimaeus is almost at the next level of being. And even tried to bind it with Adelbrand's pentacle, a feat that I would balk at. So, Underwood admits there, this is stuff I would never do. Notice Nathaniel doesn't say, shut up, you damn fool. I've already done it, and I'm trying to bring him back. Stupid child, have you no concept of what such a being might do to you if you made even the slightest slip? You mean like accidentally giving him my birthday? I should have known you were not to be trusted last year with your when your willful act of violence against the guests of my house nearly ruined my career. So he did it when he was 11. That's when he angered Lovelace, and Lovelace beat him into silence. Okay? So, what happens at the same time? Underwood's up there getting ready to punish him. Meanwhile,
Loveless.
downstairs, yeah, there's a knock at the door. There's an emergency. A rogue Jenny has been caught in Central London, page 233. Okay. And let's see, I can skip that. Skipping a whole bunch because we've only got a couple minutes left. Yeah, we can skip that. Jabor and Fakral talk with Bartimaeus. And Nathaniel hears, pages 262 and following, that Lovelace is there. In fact, I think we'll just... The imp that Nathaniel has confined to his scrying glass, 268, 269, begs to be freed, okay? Because Nathaniel has used the imp to do what? To see what's going on downstairs. And Lovelace, Underwood realizes it. Calls him a traitor. I'm going to deal with you in a moment. And page 271, I think we'll stop with this. 271, we hear Lovelace has let himself in. Okay? And Underwood's like, what? And when he comes in, he says, my house is your house. Why does he say that? Because it's it's a saying. Does he mean it literally? Does he mean, go ahead, come on in, take whatever you want? No. Why is Lovelace there? To get the amulet. Okay? So, we will pick up on 272 on Monday. We'll have another quiz on Wednesday. Okay? And I will probably